Hello, you guys, and welcome to my YouTube channel or podcast. I guess I genuinely can't believe that I'm even saying that because it genuinely took me so long to set up. I kept on doubting myself, I kept on finding reasons on why I don't want to do it or why I should procrastinate, and now we're actually here after so many years of me wanting to try. So, my name is Sophia, and I am a psychology student, and I want to make a psychology podcast. The reason for that was a motivational letter that we kind of had to submit in a seminar, and I'll probably put it somewhere there in an English translation of it. But basically, I said that, especially in Germany, where I study, getting into psychology is very grade oriented, and so most people that get in are like from wealthy, privileged academic backgrounds, and so it makes psychology very selective towards some sort of people. And I genuinely feel like psychology should be a tool for everyone, and everyone should have the right to have this access to this knowledge, because I honestly believe that the world would be a way better place, or especially people who are like often being used or manipulated would have it so much easier if they would have more psychological knowledge. And that is the reason why I actually started this channel. I don't know in which direction I want this to go. I always wanted to have a self-improvement channel, but since I study psychology, I also have the opportunity to do something purely informational, or maybe a mixture of both. So I decided that my first videos are going to be very different from each other, so that I can try out everything and then just decide what works best for me. And for the first video, we're actually going to start very basic. I decided to do 10 fun facts about psychology. And because I thought this is something that everybody can use or like. A few of these facts are purely fun facts, and a few of them you can actually use for your everyday life. I've learned these facts over my first term of studying psychology, but I've also picked a few of them up from social media or from some psychology books. I will definitely mark the facts that I've learned from lectures in blue and the facts that I've learned from books and social media in pink. But even if I have something from the media, I always did my research afterwards. So none of these facts are actually just going to be from TikTok or Instagram. And I'm not gonna yap your ear off anymore. It's been 3 minutes. I'm sorry. So I will just get started. The first one is purely just a fun fact, and it is about fetishes. Because every sixth person on this planet has a fetish, and obviously the real values are going to be way higher because a lot of people feel embarrassed and they don't want to tell other people that they have a fetish. But the most common one is the foot fetish. And there actually is a neurological reason behind that. And it's called neurological overlapping. Because when you look at the brain sensory map or the somatosensory cortex, I hope I pronounced that right, genitals and feet are right next to each other. And there are a lot of scientists that are claiming that these areas are overlapping or cross-wiring with each other, which can lead to people being sexually aroused when they see feet. Okay, the next one is the Dunning-Kruger effect, and that is something that you can use for yourself and for your own life pretty easily. And it's about individuals with low competence tending to rate their abilities really high, while people with actually high competence and high qualifications tending to rate themselves low and their own abilities. And this is actually due to some perception errors, where people with low competence tend to think that they've done well in a task, or that they've done better than the majority or the average than of all the other people that took this task or exam or whatever. And these people also tend to underestimate the skills of actual qualified people, or people with actually high competence. And this experiment got conducted in New York in the Cornell University in the year of 1999 by Dunning and Kruger. Well, surprise! And all that they did basically was take a bunch of students as participants and make them do various tasks or tests about grammar. And afterwards they had to rate themselves on how well they think they've done. And surprisingly, the people with the lowest scores rated themselves the highest, and people who got everything right, or people who had a really high score, tended to rate themselves low. So what does this basically say? This basically says that if you doubt yourself, or if you think you've done poorly, you maybe actually didn't, and maybe it's just a Dunning-Kruger effect. Because even afterwards, when they called these people that had a low result but like a high self-rating out on that they scored poorly in the test, they still believed in their own abilities and that they've scored high. So what this is basically saying is, don't doubt yourself. Like, genuinely, if you're scared to do something, if you don't think that you have what it takes, you might be actually one of those competent people that tend to rate themselves lower. And especially if you get insecure about someone bragging on how amazing they are, or how easy the exam was, or how well they did, maybe they just have low competence and overestimate their skills. The next one is about loneliness, and loneliness can actually kill you in a way. People who experience loneliness are 50% more likely to die than people with healthy and stable human connections. And also it increases the risk of a stroke, cognitive decline, premature death, and health and heart diseases a lot. And also lonely people develop mental illnesses in a lot of cases, and in order to cope, for example, they tend to get OCD, depression, anxiety. And especially for teenagers who experience a lot of loneliness tend to have lower grades. And that actually kind of makes me sad when I think back about my teenage years, about my youth, because I used to be the straight A student. I used to super care about my grades. I used to be super hardworking. And back then in school, I know kids can be very mean, but I used to get bullied for my grades. And so I kind of became way more obsessed with it than I was before, and I knew that there were people kind of preying on my downfall, if you can say it like that. So I isolated myself. I didn't care about human connections. I didn't really spend time with my friends. Most of the time I stayed home and studied, and I always used to cry or be so frustrated because I didn't get the grade that I expected myself to get, and I didn't got the grade that was worth the amount of studying that I did. And then afterwards I switched classes. I didn't get bullied anymore, but I kept on like isolating myself, studying and studying. And now, after getting into psychology and actually studying psychology, I've just realized that that was literally the reason why my grades weren't as high as I expected or wanted them to be. So yeah, first of all, don't bully people. And second of all, if you care about grades, please also care about your social human connection. And there's also an experiment. It's really old. You can barely call it an experiment because it's from the 13th century. And it got conducted, or the person who set that experiment up was King Friedrich II. And the question that he basically had was what is the language of God? So he basically took a bunch of freshly newborn babies, and he had nurses that cared for those babies, like that fed them, that washed them, but they weren't allowed to speak to the babies nor show them any human connection, not any mimic or not any face expression, genuinely nothing. And he thought that these babies would eventually start speaking in a language, and that would be the language of God. And there were various theories on what language it would end up being, like, for example, ancient Greek or Latin. And yeah, but by the end of the day, all of the babies died. Even though they had way more food than other babies, they were washed, like physiologically, they didn't have any reason to die. But especially for a baby, human connections and socializing and speaking to the baby is very crucial for its development. And so this is actually just I think it's like the most common study among humans. Many of you guys probably have heard from it, but I'm basically saying that loneliness is way more crucial for your mental health and for your physiological health than you actually think it is. So please, if there is a friend that you haven't talked with in a while, if you realize that you have been downing yourself in work, please set up some time with your friends, send up a nice message or whatever will make you happy, because loneliness is equally important as success. The next one is a psychological theory or a psychological effect that is actually based on a really sad and tragic story, and it's the bystander effect. You guys have probably heard a lot about it since it is very common, and it is about individuals tending to not help other people or report an emergency when they are in a large group of people. And the woman who basically caused or gave birth to that theory is called Kitty Giovannis. And I'm so sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I looked it up on YouTube, no, on Google, I'm sorry. And I just hope I keep saying her name right, because this is a very sad story. Because in the year of 1864 in New York, that woman got murdered, raped and tortured in front of an apartment building. And in New York, they have these huge apartment buildings, so a lot of people are living there. Reported the case to the police. One person called afterwards when the woman was already dead, and 38, you just like have to give yourself the number, 38 witnesses. Afterwards, when they were asked, they said that they believed that it was just a drunk person being outside, so they didn't think much about it, which actually, I'm sorry, sounds crazy to me, because how can rape and murder sound like a drunk person? I just feel like that was just a huge excuse to just not get in trouble with the police. I don't know, but that's a different topic. And so it actually created huge controversy, because back then, in that time, people believed that when there are more people present, obviously there are more people helping and there are more people reporting to the police. But it actually was the complete opposite. And later on, in the year of 1968, there was an experiment conducted about the bystander effect by John Darley and Bib Latane. I'm so sorry. And participants were in a room where there was like a staged accident happening. So the room filled up with smoke, and they waited how long it took for one person to report the emergency. And also there were scenarios where a person was just alone in that room being filled with smoke. And the result was surprisingly that the person that was alone in a room was way quicker to report the emergency than when a large group of people was being present. And that actually makes a lot of sense, because us humans, we tend to lack social responsibility when a lot of people are being present. Like, we can, for example, say, oh, somebody else must have reported that case. Oh, somebody else must have called the emergency, so I don't have to do it anymore, blah, blah. The other one could be obviously the most explanatory one. Us humans, we are social beings. As I said, loneliness can actually kill you. Our survival is very linked to being socially approved. So we tend, like us humans, we tend to care a lot about what people think, what people say about us, to be accepted in a group. So when we're the one person out of a huge group of people standing up, reporting our emergency or whatever, we also make ourselves vulnerable for social judgment, which can obviously lead to a lot of vulnerability and a lot of criticism that some people can't handle. So a lot of people tend to stay quiet if there's actually a crime or an emergency happening. And the other one could be that we believe that the situation isn't actually as bad as we think it is, or isn't actually an emergency if a lot of people are present. The next one is actually, it isn't the first fact, but it is something that I've learned from university, from a lecture, finally. And the higher the sexual arousal, the more aggressive people tend to be. And this was an experiment conducted by Silman. And people were basically given pornographic material to watch to make them sexually aroused. And afterwards, they were provoked in two different ways. The first one could be via electroshocks, and the second one was via negative feedback. For example, saying, oh yeah, you don't seem to be very intelligent. Oh, you didn't seem to do well in this task. There were people provoking those participants who just watch pornographic material. And afterwards, these people had the opportunity to punish those people back that punished them. And the more sexually aroused, the stronger were the electroshocks that were given back, and also the noise blasts, because they also were allowed to punish with noise blasts. And that basically led to the conclusion that the stronger the sexual arousal is, the more aggressive that person tends to behave or tends to be. And this actually also explains a lot of violent crimes, a lot of rape crimes, also a lot of crimes towards women and children, because the more sexually aroused you are, the more aggressive you are. And this is terrifying, obviously, but after knowing that, a lot of crimes that I've heard about or seen in documentaries or true crime podcasts make a lot more sense now. And that is what I say about psychology. Psychology is genuinely so incredible, because you can use everything and anything on something that you know about, or on your own life, or something that you've heard. Like, you can replicate psychology so easy, and I don't think there's actually any other field that you can study that shows and teaches you so much about life. So this video has actually came to an early end. Surprisingly, I'm wearing the same top, but it is a month later and I'm back at my university flat. But while cutting the video, I realized that it was way too long. It was like an hour long approximately. So I decided to split the video into two parts. It's also going to make it way easier for me. So that is part 1. I hope you liked it. Just for your information, part 2 will be a little bit longer because the facts in this video were mainly about books and media, and the facts in the second video are majority from university. And obviously I got graded for these lectures, for these facts, so obviously I have a lot of research and knowledge in them. So obviously the second part is going to be a little bit longer, but I hope you don't mind it. And I hope you like this video. If you want me to do any more specific videos, or if you have any ideas or anything that you can see or anything that you want to know about a person that studies psychology, just let me know. And yeah, I wish you a really nice day and thank you for listening. Bye bye.